This week, people from all over the world have gathered in vigils to mark the one-year anniversary of the 7th of October attacks, when armed fighters from the Palestinian militant group Hamas breached border fences and launched a devastating surprise attack on Israel, targeting civilians as well as soldiers. Thousands of rockets were fired at Israel. More than 1,000 Israelis were killed, and around 250 hostages were seized and taken back to Gaza. Although some of the hostages have since been released, around 97 currently remain unaccounted for. Hamas are banned in the UK and other countries as a terrorist group. They're fighting for a separate Palestinian state that would include at least some land currently occupied by Israel. 1 year on from the attacks, and people in Israel are still struggling to come to terms with what happened. We spoke to Arel. On October 7th, both her uncles were abducted and her aunt and her 2 cousins were killed. She sent us this message.
On October 7th, my 2 uncles, Eli and Yossi Sharabi, were kidnapped to Gaza. Yossi was home with his wife and his 3 daughters, and just in 1 second, terrorists broke into the house and took Yossi with them. Eli, my other uncle, he was also home with his wife and his 2 daughters. And when the terrorists broke in, they immediately took Eli.
After Hamas abducted Arel's uncle Eli, his wife and 2 daughters were killed. The family later found out that Arel's uncle Yossi died, and they're still hoping for her uncle Eli's release.
I know that no one understands the pain. No one understands how hard it is for us, the families of the hostages. I'm only 17. I should be worried about school, about going out with friends, about getting my driving license. But I can't do that because I need to bring my uncles home.
Little is known about the welfare of many of the Israeli hostages still held in Gaza, and as time goes on, their loved ones have become increasingly concerned. In the weeks and months after the attack by Hamas, Israel responded with massive airstrikes and a ground invasion into Gaza to try and root out the militants responsible. Since then, around 40,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza, many of them civilians. Over 1 million people have been forced to flee their homes and find shelter in temporary accommodation like refugee camps in the south of the territory. The UN and other aid organisations have been warning for months of the growing humanitarian crisis in Gaza, with food and medicine in desperately short supply. Majd is 15, and at the start of the war, he and his family had to flee northern Gaza. He's currently living in Deir al-Balah and told us what a typical day in Gaza is like for him and his family.
Every day, we wake up to the sound of explosions and bombings. I used to live in a spacious house, with my own room, my own bed and my own mattress. I now live in a simple, worn-out, small tent that doesn't accommodate my family and doesn't protect us from the winter cold or summer heat. I used to wake up peacefully and prepare to go to school to receive my education and meet my friends and classmates. Now I stand in long lines for drinking water and food. Football has always been my hobby since childhood, and I dreamed of becoming a famous player representing my national team. But the war prevented me from playing for several reasons. My foot injury, due to a nearby bombing, bombings of playgrounds and the loss of some friends. Now I feel very sad when I see children playing football, as it reminds me of my friends and the ambitions I lost.
Some children aren't letting the war stop them from trying to live a normal life, like Mariam. She attends a school in a tent in Khan Yunis.
I'm in 7th grade. I should be in 8th grade now, but we lost a year. And here we are, learning amidst the rubble in this tent. We're suffering from this heat. And before, we used to study in classrooms with lights. But now, we just wish we could write on desks instead of on our laps, which is really exhausting. Despite everything, we are still studying here, and I'm happy about that. At the same time, I feel sad because before the war, we were learning and enjoying life.
Unfortunately, tension in the region is nothing new. There has been fighting for centuries between Christians, Muslims and Jews seeking control of what is known as the Holy Land, an area of special significance to each religion. For a more in-depth look at the history of the region and the causes behind this conflict, you can head to our website at first.news/FYI. World leaders have tried to bring a peaceful end to the conflict, and there have been temporary ceasefires, but negotiations for lasting peace have so far failed. Despite this, many on both sides continue to hope for a peaceful solution.